Thank you very much. At this point, we would now like to call on our singing leader, Judith Silver, to lead us on a peace chant.
From here. Hello, friends. We will do some singing together. It will be very easy. I have my lovely friends here. They are the Faiths in Tune musicians who will be playing and singing for you during the week. So we will sing a little piece in Spanish and French on this side. We will sing a little bit of English over here. And when you're singing, I will also sing some other languages. And we will have Aloka here to help us as well with the other parts. So, first, we will sing the words La Paz. Let's say it once in Spanish, La Paz. And if you're South American, you will say paz, I guess, yes? Yeah, okay. And la paix in French, la paix. So we go alternating, la paz, la paix, la paz, la paix. Okay, it goes like this. La paz, la paix, la paz, la paix. Let's sing together. La paz, la paix, la paz, la paix. You sound wonderful. These great people only learned this just now as well. Wonderful. The English part goes like this. Peace be with you. Peace be with you. Peace be with you. Peace be with you. So first we're all on one note at the bottom. Let's try that. Peace be with you. And then we go up to here. Peace be with you. And then it wiggles. Peace be with you. Peace be with you. You're very good. Again. Peace be with you. Peace be with you. Peace be with you. Peace be with you. Beautiful. We can sing those at the same time. So all of us are here because we want harmony, because we want peace. And I think that singing together is one of the most beautiful and simple ways to create peace and harmony and understanding. So we will sing for each other, La Paz, La Paix, and Peace be with you. There are some other words that will come up. We'll sing a little bit of Salam Alaikum. I have just learnt a lovely phrase in Japanese, which will come up, and Chinese also. So if you find that your language is not represented and you would like it to be in the song, please come and tell me how it is in your language and I'll make a part for you. Meanwhile, over here we have La Paz. So it's just this side of the room. La Paix, La Paz. And you'll keep singing La Paix while we sing Peace be with you over on this side. Peace be with you. Peace be with you. Peace be with you. Peace be. Amazing. Again. So let's keep singing. Salam alaikum, salam alaikum, salam alaikum. Peace be with you. La paix, la paz, la paix. Other languages tomorrow. Thank you, friends. Thank you. Faith's in tune. Thank you, Anya.
Thank you. Peace be with you. Esteemed religious leaders, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Plenary 1. In this session, we will invite the co-moderator of Religions for Peace, Dr. Vinu Aram, on stage, together with the speakers of this session, and she will introduce the speakers of this session. Thank you.
Friends, I'm sure you've looked into your little bags and found these two books. One in blue, which says the handbook. Have you found it? And the other is a red book called the workbook. Well, it's my honor today to invite you back to a plenary, the first plenary after our opening ceremony. And the first plenary is going to advance the theme of the World Assembly. And in this plenary, we will be looking at advancing shared well-being using the lens of looking at positive peace, a multi-religious viewing of peace. We only have 60 minutes, so I'm going to be very brief. I want to draw you to the workbook now, where you have the background papers on each of these themes. I know when you had the regional consultations, you had a chance to review these papers and contribute to it. But these papers also, in many ways, harvest and harness the ideas and the work of Religions for Peace that is ongoing. We heard Dr. Wendley speak about the idea of positive peace this morning. He spoke of it in the context of an aspiration that many of us share around the world for shared well-being. In the paper that is elaborated, we also speak about the modern order, the benefits we have got from it, the benefits of institutions like the UN, the underlying focus on human rights and how it was influenced law and practice. But it also looks at the limits of the modern order. And if I may just quote the first paragraph from there and introduce the speakers to you this afternoon, it says, among the great strengths of the modern order are its commitments to human freedom, universal human rights, and the tolerance of others. These powerful principles, along with the notion of free trade, constitute an essential part of the foundation of the modern order that lies behind its extraordinary achievements, such as the establishment of the UN, the free market, and the technology aid that has come into greater connectivity. However, alongside these strengths are also limitations. At present, the strengths and the weaknesses of this foundational organizing principles of the modern order have come into reflection and questioning. It is necessary to examine these core principles to discern the ways religions and traditions can work together, but also with other sectors and complement one another. Doing so, we can help each other to find ways in which we can build and nurture positive peace. I have a very distinguished panel with me this afternoon. The way that this 1 hour will unfold is we will have a keynote address by the President of the European Interreligious Council of Religious Leaders, Reverend Thomas Whiff, after which we will have 3 panelists. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce them to you. His Excellency, José Ramos Horta, the former President and Prime Minister of East Timor and Nobel Peace Prize winner. Brothers and sisters, please welcome him with a round of applause. Again, will you join me in welcoming Mr. Steve Kililea, who serves on the Executive Committee of Religions for Peace, is also the founder and executive chairman of the charitable foundation Institute for Economics and Peace. Brothers and sisters, please welcome Steve amongst us. It's also a joy for me to welcome Dr. Georgette Bennett, the president and the founder of the Tannenbaum Center for Interreligious Understanding. We are so pleased that you're with us this afternoon, and we will hear you shortly. But as the president of the European Interreligious Council, may I now invite Reverend Thomas Whiff to give the keynote address.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Friends, brothers and sisters, eminences, excellencies, my contribution is just 7 shorter points. My first point, the development of the concept of positive peace. In 1971, the German philosopher Georg Picht wrote how astonishing it is that also our culture has produced a science of war. There is no science of peace, its preconditions and strategies. Things have changed significantly since Picht's time, and today there is an increasing complex body of international peace research. A groundbreaking development in the contemporary understanding of peace was Johann Galtung's distinction between negative peace as the absence of personal violence and positive peace as the absence of structural violence. According to Galtung, discord and violence cannot simply be attributed to individuals or groups. Political, economic, social and cultural factors and systems contribute to injustice and violence. In the late 90s, Galtung supplemented his concept of peace with a third aspect, that of cultural peace. Cultural peace is the development of values, attitudes and norms within a society that do not tolerate or condone forms of direct or structural violence based on a person's origins, cultures, beliefs, gender, and sexual orientation. 2, key factors in building positive peace. The Institute of Economics and Peace is a key organization that has significantly contributed to a more comprehensive understanding of the necessary conditions for positive peace. It has identified 8 pillars of positive peace, which are derived from statistical, empirical research and analysis. And we are pleased to welcome the founder of the EPE on this panel too. The 8 pillars of positive peace describe concrete conditions for positive peace. I will not read the 8 pillars because you can find them on page 18 of the workbook. Just to mention briefly, positive peace requires a well-functioning government, sound economic regulations, equitable distribution of resources, assuring the rights of others, good relations with neighbors, free flow of information, high levels of human capital, low levels of corruption. We have to think about how multi-religious work and organizations support and perhaps even enhance this vision of positive peace. 3, religious contributions to developing a culture of peace. A culture of peace must be based on a careful analysis of the causes and relationships of violence, and he must offer a comprehensive approach to supporting peaceful coexistence. In his explanation of the concept of shared well-being, William Wendley formulates 3 key questions. How does an individual become a good person? How do we build a good society? What is the integral and reciprocal relationship between becoming a good person and building a good society? From the standpoint of RFP and all religious traditions, peace is a fundamental attitude that starts with the individual. The Peace Charter for Forgiveness and Reconciliation, which we will hear more about later, speaks of inner peacefulness and notes, we believe that peace is more than the absence of violence, and that includes inner peacefulness as well as peacefulness with others and with the environment. End of quote. In its Lille Declaration of a Culture of Peace, 2009, the European Council of Religious Leaders stated that peace of the heart and mind and peace of the society are connected. Peace and justice are inseparable, as are truth and reconciliation. 4, a politics of positive peace. In contrast to positive peace, it is unfortunate that too often state and international politics continue to be shaped by destructive attitudes and confrontational relationships to gain power and influence. Throughout the world, we are facing a new phase of threat in which treaties on arms control and nuclear weapons are being ignored or terminated. More weapons do not bring more security. On the contrary, they make the world a much more dangerous place. Should we not, as RFP family worldwide, stand together much more courageous against the global arms industry? Working for positive peace requires a vision and considerable patience, which clashes with the demands of modern-day politics, which often is oriented toward next elections. In contrast, most religious histories that are thousands of years old, these rich and sacred traditions and memories sustain a hope that cannot be diminished. Religions should be calm oases in a world of impatience and acceleration, and specialists in sustainability and perseverance for peace. Peace means tireless but blessed hard work. As citizens of a nation and members of a religious community, we should ask ourselves which of the influential and powerful persons in our country's politics are seriously committed to a peaceful and conflict-free world. It is highly encouraging that we are invited to this World Assembly as guests of the President of the Federal Republic of Germany and the Federal Foreign Office. Their hospitality gives us hope and demonstrates that there are countries that stand for proactive and visionary peace politics. We should also recognize the substantial efforts of many people from the RFP network, especially youth members, actively working for military disarmament, for example, in the international campaign to abolish nuclear weapons. At the preparatory meeting of the European Youth and Women's Delegation in Warsaw, the suggestion was made that RFP should lobby governments to commit at least 1% of worldwide military spending to global peace work. From Steve Gilela, I learned that the cost of violence to the global economy are about 15 trillion US dollars. Please calculate 1%. The political credo, if you want peace, prepare for war, is no longer acceptable. We must speak out loudly and clearly for what we believe in. If you want peace, prepare for peace. 5, future challenges for RFP. Multi-religious peace work begins with the willingness of individual religious community to self-critically and transparently challenge themselves. They are not immune to corruption, exploitation, the abuse of power and violence. Religious community must be aware of their ambivalence. As members of religious community, we are not automatically better people. No, we are not. We must ask ourselves self-critically whether we live up to our own standards and the message we are supposed to present. 6, my last point. By the way, you can find my full text with the sources of quotations on the ECL website. In concluding, I want to remind ourselves that we all are present here also on behalf of the countless people throughout the world who are working toward peaceful coexistence. Most of them are not well-known religious leaders, but nevertheless special and inspirational people, especially women, had many of the small but effective peace initiatives throughout the world. All of these unsung heroes deserve our recognition and utmost respect. They may not draw up declarations and statements as we do sometimes, but with their hearts and imagination, they make an essential contribution to a more peaceful world. They form the basis of Religions for Peace. I'm with these people in my thoughts as I argue that the future direction of RFP International must aim for a new balance between bottom-up and top-down approaches. I'm convinced that as a worldwide network, we can and we have to achieve a lot more to help develop a more peaceful world. In view of this, we should continue to commit ourselves to even more serious, concrete, courageous steps in the spirit of our enduring motto, different faiths, common actions. What is my concrete next step? What is your concrete next step? What is our concrete next step? After Lindau. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for, I think, leading us through these notions of positive peace and negative peace, how they are looked and studied in depth today, and how we have a chance to influence these drivers of positive peace. Thomas, you also speak of the bottoms up and the top down. I think there is a real opportunity to harness both these capacities. May I now invite His Excellency Jose Ramos Horna to speak to us.
Good afternoon. In view of the constraints of time, I will not go through the usual protocol greetings and appreciations. When I was invited and insisted to come by my good friends, Professor Schurer and Bishop Gunnar Stolzert, I responded. Looking at the list of guests coming, I said, what else am I going to add in view of the many religious and intellectual luminaries? And I declined. Then their moral and ethical pressure on me asked me to come. I came because both Bishop Gunnar Stolzet actually have been a long time mediator in my own country, helping resolving our conflicts there. And Professor Schurer is like a mentor for me, so I decided to come as an obedient student. And I decided, what should I share with you people? And a few years ago, when I was still in office, I had a state visit to Israel and to Palestine. And of course, I had all the official meetings with Shimon Peres was the president, Netanyahu was the prime minister, and he still is, as you know. And I met with everybody else in the government. And I finished my official state visit in Israel, 2-3 days, I don't recall. And then I crossed overland to West Bank, to Ramallah. And I was probably the only head of state who ever did that. And that I was able to continue my trip without going out to Amman or to Paris and then fly to Ramallah. I told the Israelis, sorry, let me just go overland and they agreed. So I went to Palestine. I gave 2 public lectures, one in the Hebrew National University and one in Ramallah. And a friend, and I don't mention name, another Nobel laureate, when I told him I was going to Israel, he said, be careful, you are going to explode diplomatic minefields. You're going to step on diplomatic minefields. Well, I have to say, I didn't commit any faux pas during all that travel, because I decided to stick to what I know best, to share our experiences. So what is our experience? I come from a predominantly Catholic country. We are 1.3 million people, of which 98% are practicing Catholic. We have a small Protestant community and a small Muslim community. Indonesia is 265 million, more than 80% are Muslims. Then they have a strong Catholic minority, strong Protestant minority, Bali predominantly Hindu, etc. So we had 24 years of conflict. And the people would expect that at independence, conflict, tensions with Indonesia would continue. And tensions within our own society would continue. Well, I have to tell you, one bright spot in the world, and there are many bright spots. One is in our region. There are no 2 countries in Southeast Asia, in Asia, that have better relations than Timor-Leste and Indonesia. At independence, our side, the winning side, vis-a-vis those Timorese who are on the other side, we decide not to embark on revenge, not to embark on, not even heeding the advice from some in the UN system in New York, some friends in the US Congress, to push for a special international tribunal. We strongly rejected that. Our strong disagreement with both Kofi Annan and later Ban Ki-moon was that we do not agree with a special tribunal for Timor-Leste for the crimes of the past on Indonesia or on the Timorese. We understood the fragility of Indonesia's own transition from dictatorship in 1998-99 to democracy. And I remember me stating a number of times, I have the fullest confidence in the Indonesian society. 10 years from now, 15 years from now, democracy will consolidate in Indonesia. Well, the last election in Indonesia a few months ago was a testament to that. It was very intense, there was some violence, radical elements tried to manipulate religion, ethnicity to their advantage. But Indonesian democracy survived. Indonesian tolerance, secular Islam survived and came out stronger. In my country, we rejected prosecution, revenge. We pursue truth and reconciliation processes. Today, Freedom House in Washington rated Timor-Leste as the best functioning democracy in Southeast Asia. Although, I would say, in the context of imperfect democracies in the world. To say Timor-Leste is the best functioning democracy doesn't mean necessarily that we are a Norwegian-style democracy. We have our imperfections, our fragilities. We also have the freest media in Southeast Asia. Again, if you look at your neighborhood, it might not be too difficult to have the freest media or the freest democracy in Southeast Asia. So we are very relaxed about not taking for granted, or consider that our democracy is perfect. We have the best possible relationship with all religions. Our government provides in the annual budget significant financial assistance to our Catholic Church. Our Catholic Church leaders travel on diplomatic passport. So we provide also to the Muslim community, the leaders, and to the Protestant communities. They get financial assistance in proportion to their followers, their membership. We do not have death penalty. One of the few countries in all of Asia that does not have a death penalty. That's where we disagree with our brothers and sisters in ASEAN and beyond. We don't even have a life in prison. 25 years is the maximum prison sentence. Indonesia shown to us their own maturity and statesmanship. When we tried to reach out to Indonesia, they didn't turn their back on us, having been rejected in the referendum in 1999. You could understand that the feelings of rejection, they would turn their back on the newly independent Timor-Leste. No, quite the contrary. Indonesia turned back, walked halfway on our side, and we began to normalize relations. Our border is probably among the most peaceful in the world, our land border between us and Indonesia. Timorese passport holders travel freely to Indonesia, no visa required. Indonesia do not require visa to enter Timor-Leste. Timorese students pay domestic Indonesian fees in Indonesian universities. Indonesian universities do not charge our students foreign fees. And this is only to illustrate the depth, the strength of the government-to-government and people-to-people relationship. So all of this requires leadership. Whatever religion, no matter how you spouse, what religion you spouse, whether you're Buddhist, you're Hindu, you're Catholic, you are a Protestant, you are Buddhist, we require strong leadership at religious level, spiritual level, and political level. Without strong political leadership on our side and Indonesia, these two countries, locked in a conflict in the past, would not have been able to reconcile. It was the courage of our leadership, and I'm not saying me because the leader that I bow to and give credit to is Mr. Xanana Guzmão, who was 17 years fighting in the mountains, 8 years in prison. He learned to love Indonesians, to love the people during the battle, during the fight, during the prison. And he is the one that with courage, like Mandela said, no to revenge, we go for reconciliation. So no matter what is the religion we espouse, all religions, all civilizations are supposed to espouse solidarity, humanity. And that's what our shared experience in our country and in Indonesia. But in regard to Indonesia, not enough credit has been given to two great Indonesian Muslim mass movement, mass organizations, Muhammadiyah and Nahdlatul Ulama. Between them, they have a combined support of membership of almost half of the entire Indonesian population of 265 million people. They were created long before Indonesia's independence, in the 20s and the 30s. It is two fantastic organizations with their own political agenda sometimes, obvious. Who doesn't? Which religious group doesn't have Catholics don't have a political agendas, Protestants don't have, we all have it. But in terms of their contribution to maintaining Indonesia as an inclusive, tolerant society, it is undeniable, and I pay tribute to these two organizations and to the Indonesian people. And I think I should stop here. I think I probably already got over. I had written contribution here, but I decided to share with you ad lib, and sometimes it takes me a bit longer than I'm supposed to. My apologies.
Your Excellency, we will come back to you. We want to hear again from you about how such a tolerant, inclusive leadership can be created. You have done so in your generation, but when you speak to young people and the next generation, maybe it's also a thought, and that is in line with positive peace building. We'll come back to you on that. Friends, it gives me great pleasure to invite Steve now to share his work and his thoughts.
One, two, three, four, five. Yes, it's working. How about that? I thought I might start with this personal story. And sort of, in many ways, I'm just an accidental person working on peace. I established a family foundation about 27 years ago, which works with the poorest of the poor. It's taken me to many countries, including East Timor. And the direct beneficiaries from that are now about 3.6 million people. So I've been in a lot of conflict zones, near post-war zones. I was in northeast Kivu in the Congo about 15 years ago, and I started to think, what are the opposite of all these stressed out nations I'm spending time in? What are the most peaceful nations in the world? And was there anything I could learn from them? Searched the internet and couldn't find a thing. And that is how the Global Peace Index was born. But if a simple businessman like myself could be walking through Africa and wonder, what are the most peaceful nations in the world? Then how much do we know about peace? If you can't measure peace, can you truly understand it? If you can't measure it, how do you know whether your actions are helping you to actually improve or deteriorate? You don't know. So from the Global Peace Index, what we did then was did a lot of statistical analysis to understand the factors which are most closely associated with peace. So today we've got a database of about 18 to 50,000 different data sets, depending on how you want to count them, at the level of country level. And we do statistical analysis against that to understand the factors which are most closely associated with peaceful societies. And this body of work we call positive peace. Now, what we've found, which is truly profound, which for me this really is truly profound, what we've found is when we take those structures which create highly peaceful societies, or positive peace, which is a framework of 8 pillars, what we find is also statistically related with many other things which we think are important, such as the higher per capita income, better improvement in GDP, higher levels of happiness, better performance on measures of ecology, and better performance on development is measured through the Millennium Development Goals. So in many ways, what you can say is positive peace describes an optimal environment for human potential to flourish. And that is really a truly profound finding. But when we look at this, and this is rather complicated, so I'm just going to keep it simple, is positive peace operates systemically. It operates as a system. You can't take one pillar out and say that's the one we want to improve. All 8 interrelate with each other. And this is quite profound because we look at the way we go about solving societies today. We look at cause and effect. We find a problem, we look at the cause, and now we try and change that. But systems interrelate and function together. So if we look at, let's say, the US election, and the election of President Trump, some people would be trying to find the cause, where it's really the relationships and flows within society which cause events to come about. The events are secondary, cause and effect, the events come first. This is truly a profoundly different way of looking at society. So, positive peace is an optimal environment for human potential to flourish. So, if we look at the major challenges facing humanity today, they're global in nature. Climate change, ever-decreasing biodiversity, full use of the fresh water on the planet. And unless we have a world which is basically peaceful, we'll never get the levels of trust, cooperation or inclusiveness necessary to solve these problems. Therefore, peace is a prerequisite for the survival of society as we know it in the 21st century. And that is different than any other epoch in human history. In the past, peace may have been the domain of the altruistic, but in the 21st century, it's literally in everyone's self-interest. So, one more point and then I'll finish up. So if we look at positive peace, we're actually actualising it today. We'll have a workshop which starts this afternoon, and the back end of the workshop will actually have practical applications of positive peace which people can take away. We've got 17 different organisations around the world we're now partnering with. Probably the biggest is Rotary. It has 35,000 clubs, 1.3 million members, and they're rolling positive peace education out through all their network. We've trained 1,100 ambassadors now in about 60 different countries on positive peace. And we developed a whole series of online training with the aim of training 1 million people in the next 2 years on positive peace. So I think positive peace in many ways, it's electric. The concept of actually focusing on the positive rather than the negative has a rhyme and a ring to it, which we can see resonating in many different societies in many different parts of the world. Thank you.
Steve, we'll come back to you with a question about, sometimes when you say it functions as systems, the problem and the solutions look far away and much bigger. We will have to come back to you to say what are some ways at the country level and the local level that we can start building positive peace. It's my privilege now to invite Dr. Georgette Bennett to share her thoughts and words.
Thank you. Well, after all of these positive thoughts, I think it's time to talk about hate. So I'm going to be focusing on hate speech and the route from there to positive speech. So first of all, I'm very honored to have been invited to address this body. The occasion of the invitation happens to be the recent publication of a biography of my late husband, Rabbi Mark Tannenbaum. His life inspired me to spend the last 27 years of my life advancing interreligious understanding. So while normally I would be doing my own thing, today I really see myself as channeling him on the subject of positive peace. One of the greatest threats to positive peace is hate speech and the weaponization of language. Now, weaponization of language, that's a term that didn't exist when Mark was pioneering the interreligious work for which he became famous. But it was a concept that he well understood, and it was a key weapon in his arsenal for combating hate during his career at the American Jewish Committee. He often preached about the inexorable link between verbal violence and physical violence. It starts with dehumanizing the other, dehumanizing them with words like swine, towelhead, cockroach, filth, fag, ape, parasite, dog, words that empty others of their humanity and reduce them to a caricature filled with contempt. And it then becomes a very small thing to go from that hate-filled caricature to swinging that hate-filled caricature from a lynching tree, or shoving them into a Nazi oven, or shooting a bunch of Muslims at worship in their mosque in New Zealand. American history is replete with examples between moral fervor and physical violence, the linkages between those two, from the pious Puritans who burnt their witches, to the Ku Klux Klan who burnt their crosses, to the neo-Nazis who march in Charlottesville proclaiming Jews will not replace us. And world history is replete with many more examples. One need only look at the roots of the genocides in Bosnia and Rwanda. They absolutely started with hate speech. One need only look at the politics of the right in the US, Western Europe, and the anti-refugee rhetoric that pervades society today. Now, ironically, although the core precepts of each of the great religions are rooted in love, peace, respect, it's also there that one finds the roots of hate speech. Mark referred to it as group narcissism, the idea that one's own group holds the monopoly on truth. It's grounded in apocalyptic thinking that divides the world into the children of light and the children of darkness. By virtue of being black, foreign, Jewish, Catholic, Muslim, liberal, or gay, a person can be branded as impure and therefore fair game for bigoted scourges. Now, the criminal justice system can only deal with the consequences of hate speech and react after it turns into a hate crime. And that means that religious leaders have a special responsibility for calling out hate speech when it happens and cutting it off at the source. And there are core religious values that give them the tools to do that. Now, I was asked to speak today from a Jewish perspective. So let me give it to you from a Jewish perspective. For example, one of Judaism's great contributions to civilization is the commandment, "Thou shalt not kill," obviating the practice of human sacrifice. From there, one derives the basis of all human rights, the notion that every human being is created in the sacred image of God and therefore intrinsically worthy of dignity and respect. Then there's Leviticus 19:16, "Thou shalt not stand by idly while the blood of your brother cries out from the earth," meaning that we are obliged to take action in the face of suffering. Another is the idea that besmirching a person's reputation is akin to murder, and that takes you directly to hate speech. Finally, there is the core value of Judaism, the concept of tikkun olam, the obligation to repair the world. Tikkun olam is the root of the idea that Jews are God's chosen people, and that's a concept that has been profoundly misunderstood throughout the millennia and became one of the bases for anti-Semitism. The concept of chosenness does not mean that Jews are chosen for special privilege. It means they are chosen for special responsibility, the responsibility to repair the world. Now, dogmatic beliefs can separate us, but shared values can bring us together. So Mark's take on Judaism was as a universalist, not a particularist. That means being outward-facing instead of insular. It means being in solidarity with other human beings. And referencing Dr. Venley's excellent paper, all of these concepts and practices advance positive peace by unfolding human dignity and advancing communal flourishing. The techniques that Mark used are completely relevant for the toxic environment in which we live today. He formed multi-faith coalitions to address key issues. He would have used them to address the demonization of Muslims, the LGBTQ community, people of color, Jews. He would have called out the politics of purity that cause us to view the other as evil rather than someone who simply holds different points of view than we do. He would have debunked the myths with facts by popularizing the relevant history. He would have mobilized the moral authority of clergy. He would have channeled politicians' claims of piety if they behaved in ways that contradict the principles they espouse. But above all, he would have listened deeply to the fears that underlie hate. He would have spoken powerfully to those fears and used the media to amplify his message. Now, coming full circle to the idea of weaponizing language, the University of Virginia is doing research on the subject and developing an early warning system to detect the inflection point at which speech presages violence. The Anti-Defamation League is doing a superb job tracking extremist messaging with its Center for Technology and Society. But as important as the need to detect hate speech is the need to deflect and debunk hate speech. That means doing counter-messaging with all of the sophisticated tools that are employed by those who foment hate and violence. Social media, high-concept videos, gaming, and others. Those tools need to be hijacked by those of us who want to replace hate with deep listening and mutual respect. These are the essential building blocks for positive peace. Now, for a deeper dive into these ideas, I commend you to the book, Confronting Hate. It's around here someplace. I haven't found it. I hope you do. And thank you very much.
Friends, what you saw unfolding was the discourse on positive peace. We heard about your experience on creating courageous leaders who would say no to revenge. How could this experience and this formative lesson in leadership go to the next generation? Have you thought about it as a Nobel laureate, not just for your country, for the world?
The courage of our leadership in '99 to forsake justice of the victors, in the sense that, because what happened traditionally, Nuremberg, Rwanda, Bosnia, Tokyo Tribunal, etc., imposed by the victor powers, rightly so. But in certain circumstances, and that was our circumstances, that the conflict ended when the other side, inside Indonesia, accepted a UN role in holding a referendum, and at the same time when the dictatorship fell. So we had to understand the complexities, the difficulties, fragility of their own situation. So we rejected a special international tribunal. That in itself was a lesson for our people. And we didn't all either prosecute our own side, because many Timorese collaborated, like in any conflict. It was not like black and white, that only on the other side, there were problems. So. And again, till today, 20 years after the referendum, we still talk to our people about reconciliation. So that is the message for them. But at the same time, we honor our victims. We said, we are not going to ask Indonesia for compensation. We are not going to ask, no. We, as a sovereign entity, we are going to look after our victims. We are going to honor our victims. And one last thing. Throughout the entire history of our resistance, not once you would find a text that demonized the other side. Never. We had military operations. We had a very effective fighting force. Never once they kidnapped a civilian. No Indonesian soldier captured was ever harmed. After a few months, he would be released. So, and because of that, the years and years of not demonizing the other side, and that came from our very first leader, Nicolau Lobato, continued by others. No demonizing the other side. So that way, today if you go to Timor, you see thousands of Indonesians living there. And you would be wondering, puzzled with, wow, it seemed like they never had a war before.
I think these two connections, one is the weaponization of words, and the other is a narrative of hope that is embedded in a commitment to truth and reconciliation. We have an action point coming, but I have 3 minutes as a moderator. I'm going to start from Thomas and come down before we come to the action point. If you were to look at your friends here and say, this is one thought that I would like to leave you with, what would it be, Thomas?
That we as brothers and sisters, we can do far more if we are more courageous where we live and worldwide. I'm a Swiss, and we learned through centuries that we have to have respect, to cooperate, and then it's for the well-being for everybody. We can do more than we did.
We can do more than we did. How do we undo this weaponization of words, if there is one thought that you want to leave us with?
Well, as I said in my remarks, I think we undo it by using the same techniques that are used by the haters to do counter-messaging. But I think it's also very important, just to build on Thomas's point, it's important to move beyond dialogue. It's important to find the bridges between dialogue and action.
I think as we find the bridges between dialogue and action, and we heard President Steinmüller speak about it this morning, Steve, how can an index, you said it's difficult to measure peace, it's difficult to understand peace, but in this case, there is a cost of not having a peaceful community, a peaceful nation. How can indices like the Global Peace Index help us to think more deeply and invest in these systemic changes?
I think the first thing, if you're looking at the Global Peace Index, what it does is it's got 3 different domains for peace. And by looking into each of those domains, you get a different reflection on the areas which are positive within the society and which are negative. And also over time, you can see how they're changing. But more profoundly, with positive peace, it does give you the ability now to look at the underlying progress of society. Is it in a virtuous cycle or is it in a vicious cycle? And that gives you the ability then to be able to understand what areas of the society you do need to be able to stimulate to cause it to change. But if we were looking at the US and if we were looking at Europe, and we took at the measures of positive peace, the last 4 years they've been decaying in a number of different areas, like acceptance of the rights of others, equitable distribution of resources, well-functioning government. But overall, more countries are improving in positive peace than deteriorating. So it's back to the system, looking at the system, and how do you actually change the way we think about society's operating and work.
I want you to draw on this conversation every time we meet for a World Assembly. It is to take back this stimulation that you speak about, Steve, to our own work and to be able to also contribute to each other's work. We have a personal example of someone who has led a nation to peace. We have a personal example of how he brought different sectors to bring together this new index that helps us measure peace. And you spoke about something that is now part of a global discourse, the weaponization of words, and hate being the center of so many social narratives. Thomas, like you said, I think we also need to do more. An assembly such as this is a challenge to each of us to do more before we ask for more. So friends, this is the first part of the panel, 50 minutes. It's a treat for a moderator when everybody keeps time and gives you such a rich array of thoughts. Please give the panelists a round of applause. At the press meet this afternoon, we were asked, what is it that you want to achieve during an assembly? not after an assembly. And we said we have, during the course of the assembly, different ideas and initiatives that have been brought forward by our own members that we hope can lead to a shared well-being and more peace in this world. In this case, the action point for this plenary session is on forgiveness and reconciliation. And amidst us is Bhai Mohinder Singh, who has spoken about the value of reconciliation and the value of forgiveness in the process of reconciliation. May I invite you to share this for an action point, and we will then have a chance as plenary to adopt it. Bhai Mohinder Singh.
Dear sisters and brothers, the problem being addressed. There's an urgent and profound need for reconciliation in communities in conflict and coming out of conflict. Experience shows that conflict settlements and peace accords tend to be short-lived, and that conflicts resume in the absence of reconciliation, which includes addressing deep wounds, injustices, distrust, fear, and hatred. Without reconciliation, painful memories lurk under the surface and are not brought out into the open to be slowly healed. In conflict situations, very often, urgent efforts to end the physical violence do not address the important process of reconciliation, which needs to be advanced through truth-telling, accepting responsibility, embracing repentance, and transacting forms of restitution. This absence of reconciliation compromises peace settlements and thwarts true positive peace. Religions for Peace has repeatedly experienced the absence of reconciliation among people and communities struggling to come out of situations of destructive violence and oppression. In these situations, Religions for Peace has long recognized that a deeper process of forgiveness and reconciliation is profoundly needed to achieve positive peace. Moreover, Religions for Peace knows well that religions have profound and unique resources that can, if mobilized and creatively adapted, contribute to reconciliation.
Blessed brothers and sisters, as divine sparks, we are both interconnected and interdependent. Allow me to greet you in the 6 traditional greetings. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Adopting the Peace Charter will help to equip the Religions for Peace global family of affiliated multi-religious bodies for the important work of reconciliation by raising awareness, deepening understanding, and increasing reflection on the crucial role of forgiveness and reconciliation in sustainable, positive peace building. The Peace Charter is a tool that can lovingly inspire, educate, and provide guidance in processes of forgiveness, reconciliation, and peace building amongst persons, communities of all types and nations. Importantly, it can also be a resource for healing painful historical memories within religions' various histories. It will also make a vital contribution to value-led peace education in formal and informal settings, thereby strengthening evermore the foundation for more just and peaceful persons, communities, and nations.
On the relationship between Religions for Peace and the Peace Charter for Forgiveness and Reconciliation. Religions for Peace is deeply seized by the agony and suffering of people in the midst or aftermath of violent conflicts, and it is convinced that forgiveness and reconciliation are profoundly needed and must be integrated into efforts to build sustainable, positive peace. His Eminence Bahai Sahib Mohinder Singh, co-president of Religions for Peace, invited the Religions for Peace Secretary General in 2014 to help him as a co-convener of the Peace Charter for Forgiveness and Reconciliation. The Secretary General co-convened the Charter's editorial panel in 2016, thereby ensuring the strong participation of Religions for Peace leaders. A formal presentation of the Peace Charter was made by His Eminence Bahai Sahib by video conference to the Religions for Peace International Executive Committee and International Trustees meeting on 20th October 2016 in Abuja, Nigeria. Advancing the Peace Charter is part of the current 5-year Religions for Peace International Strategic Plan.
Call for action. Being deeply moved by the great suffering borne by persons, communities, and nations in countries in countless lamentable violent conflicts and their unhealed aftermaths, being firmly convinced that reconciliation is essential to the resolution of these conflicts and that religions have unique resources for achieving the needed reconciliation, and being committed to advancing reconciliation as a vital dimension of positive peace within persons and among communities and nations, we place before the Assembly the following motion: that the Religions for Peace World Assembly adopt the Peace Charter for Forgiveness and Reconciliation.
I think the Assembly has received it with acclamation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. Thank you, Joseph. Thank you.
Friends, again, I hope in the next few days you have a chance to listen to the best minds who are with us and take forward your own commitment to peace and peace building. Thank you, Bhai Sahib. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you to all the panelists. Thank you very much.